Okay, you guys, so today we're going to be painting these winter landscapes. In winter, you see a lot of blues and whites and browns and greens, but we're going to do a mostly monochromatic color scheme, which means that all the colors are going to be the same but different values. You should have just watched a video on tints and shades. It's only like a 1-2 minute video, but I feel like it goes along with this lesson really well. Now, we're not going to be making, we're just going to be making lighter versions of our colors, okay? So today you're going to get an assortment of blues. I'll even give you some purple and some white. We are not using just the white today, okay? What you need to do today is if you're going to use the white, you're going to blend it with a color, because next week we're going to come back in and add some white details, and if you have a lot of white in here, then the white won't stand out. That's called contrast. So the first thing we're going to do is paint our sky, and I'm going to do kind of an ombre sky, and I'm also going to add some water to my paper. This is watercolor paper, okay? And even though we're using acrylic paints, we can add some water to it. So I want to start with my darkest blue, and I got a little bit of water on it. I'm gonna get a little bit more, okay? And I'm gonna do the darkest blue up top, and I'm just gonna add some water to it. You don't have to add water to it, but adding water to it makes it look a little bit like a watercolor and lets the texture of the paper come through. Okay. So then I'm gonna do another layer of that color blue, that darker blue with the water. We're gonna make kind of an ombre. And while it's still wet, you can keep adding water to it and spreading it out. With watercolor, true watercolor, you can usually get it wet again and do more with it. But with acrylic, once it dries, it's dry. So as long as it's still wet, you can add more water to it and do some more with it, okay? So there's my darker section. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a lighter section by taking some of this and some of this lighter blue and mixing them together get a lighter color. Okay, now if I want to use this blue the way it is later, I have this whole section over here that's clean. So notice I didn't use the whole blue. Also, if I want to use just this blue later, I have this whole section over here that's still clean. So I'm going to get my paintbrush wet. And honestly, it doesn't even look like it's that much lighter, but I'm just learning as I go too. And look, I got some splatters right there, so I'm just gonna blend those in. Now, if you can see in the video, I do have some things sketched in here, but that was just so I could know where some things were as a plan, okay? So now I'm gonna use just this light blue color, and I think I'm gonna finish out with that. And again, I'm getting some water on my brush, adding it to it. You don't have to do that if you just want to do the light blue to the dark blue. We just did that with our owls. And I'm going to paint right over these tree kind of shapes that I had drawn in. And I just keep getting water on my brush. And painting my whole sky. Okay, so now that your sky is done, we'll move on down to this area next, okay? Let that dry, we're gonna move down to here. And these are all, the hills are all just different values, okay? So like this one could be dark, middle, lightest, or it could be medium, dark, light. Light is up to you, okay? And you can even add some purple in there. So, and you can mix colors too, again. So I'm gonna mix these two up right here still. And this time I'm not adding water to it. And I'm gonna paint this hill this color. The sky we wanted to add a little water to so that it would, and it's okay if like the sky you do couple of values in one section. Or if you get into it and you think, see all the scratchiness, I would need to fill that in with solid paint. But if you get into it and you think, you know, I can just add some water to my brush and that'll fill in so much faster, then you can still add water to it. We're doing big details right now, so that would work too. So you're gonna choose a different value and paint each section of hill a different shade or value. So once I've used this one, I don't want to use it again. I can do something else with it, okay? All right, you guys do yours and then come back and we'll do another step. Okay, so here's mine. I used that purple color for back here. I took this color, kind of Caribbean, and added some white to it to make this and water. And then you saw me paint this, okay? So you can see my plate is kind of watery and messy, but that's okay because we're using lots of different values anyway. So what I want to do next is, in the original photo, they had some patterns in these areas, okay? And then they also had some trees back here. So while this dries, we're gonna do our trees and then we'll come back and we'll do our patterns, okay? Just these back two hills had some patterns. So on the trees, you can really use any colors you want and you can mix and blend, but what you wanna do is have a few big ones. They're like these big kind of gumball shapes. And then we're gonna come back in with a white gel pen next week. I have white gel pens and we're going to paint them, or not paint them, but add some white branches and things back in there. Okay, so I'm gonna make these kind of dark at first. These two are kind of dark. They don't all have to be this dark. You could also do some that are lighter. You could do some that are taller and skinnier. There's lots of ways to make these trees. Another idea, I'm gonna take some of this purple, and I'm not rinsing my brush in between, I'm just rolling with it. Might be to make kind of a tall, skinny, wavy one like this. That would be okay too. It's got some blue in it, that's okay, because we're creating tints and shades of the same colors. I didn't like the shape of it exactly, so there we go, I like that better, okay? You could also do some smaller ones. I'm gonna take this lighter blue and do like a small one right here. And this is all gonna be background. Next week, we're gonna put some more stuff in the foreground, and you're gonna have a deer right here of your choice. I'll have several deer for you to choose from, okay? Okay, so now these are some things that are optional. I've got all of these cool like shrubbery and trees and things in the background. When you're looking at land from above, like from an airplane and things where they have crops planted, a lot of times you have lines where the crops are. So you can take one of these values. You wouldn't want to use the exact same value that you used, but I used a light purple, so I could even use the purple just as it is. And you can come through, and you'll probably want to use a skinny green paintbrush. I'm using the red one that I've been using, and that's okay too if you want like a thicker line. But if you want a really thin line, you're going to want either the smallest version of these, there's a smaller red paintbrush, or the one of the skinny green ones, okay? And then sometimes too, you also have like, in the original, they had like a little, it wasn't quite polka dots. I'm just gonna use this color out here. It's almost like these little like V's like this. But you could also do little polka dots and that kind of stuff. I'm just doing little dabs like this. Okay, you don't have to do any of that, that's optional, all right? And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a little bit of like a vignette where part of the front of this is covered up, so you can't see it. My deer, I know, is gonna go right here in the middle, either on the hill, depending on the size of the deer, or kind of in the hill here, or maybe even standing here, okay? So I know that's where my deer is gonna go. So I need to leave a space right there. So I can take, I like this color if I want to, and I can do this little vignette, and we can come through next week just like we're gonna do with this, and we can add some white to it. Again, this is optional. If I do this and you don't like it, you don't have to do it. That's why I'm doing it, so you can see. It's like a bush that's really close up. And then I'm just gonna do the same kind of color over here. And it's gonna be smaller than that one. And these I'm not watering down because we want them to cover. Okay, and that's all we're gonna do. Make sure your name is on it somewhere before you put it in the drying rack. And then next week when we come back, we're not gonna be painting, but we are going to be adding lines and designs back in with our white paint pens. Okay, all right.